Dom, did one get through training this morning?
Yeah, we had a good session this morning. So we got selection this afternoon, and there's probably a couple of guys who were just assessing, but that's not unusual after a 6-day break. So.
In terms of just being a bit sore after that Eddie had?
Yeah, there's a couple of guys. That's all. So look, the rest of the squad trained really well. So looking forward to Friday night.
Is Taylor Walker one of those?
No, he was fine. He completed the training, so he's good to go.
He did look a bit stiff after the game, so that's just a kind of post-game.
Yeah, I think we've just got to take into account the building he had. I mean, he sort of came off not a lot of training or any game time before his first game against Richmond, and then coming into that game, second game up's always a bigger challenge. And the first one you sort of up the excitement of getting back and playing. Second one up was a little bit harder, but he'll work through that, and generally his third game hopefully he comes back in a better space.
As a coach, is it hard to get through a couple of weeks that Eddie had on that harder surface?
Well, that's not for me because I don't have to run around out there, but the players, they certainly report it's been a bit harder. So it's something we've got to manage in terms of our training and our minutes and our intensity of our training to make sure that, especially with 6 days off Eddie had, which we did last time really well, from the Essendon game into Richmond. So, and the guys, as I said, trained really well this morning, so looking forward to Friday night.
Can you shed any light on who you're watching in terms of soreness?
No, I won't go into any detail. We've got selection, and then we'll name our side tomorrow night.
Is it nice to go into selection without having to make any forced changes?
Yeah, it's always good to come out of a game where we didn't run into anyone who's gone down. So yeah, and we'll assess what the best balance is for obviously playing against Collingwood, and getting through last week's game without any injuries is always good.
I suppose now you sort of start looking at blokes that have been playing well in the twos, blokes that have come back from the injuries through the twos. Has anyone sort of impressed you there? I know a couple returned last week.
Yeah, we've got some good game time into to Riley Knight, who came back in last week. Now he's probably another week. I think probably likely best case he'd have another week. Who else we got down there? Curtly Hampton had a run around. Jordan Galucci and Miles Pyke did some good stuff in the midfield for us as well.
I don't think Das played.
No, Das didn't play, so we carried him over. So, and that was deliberate for managing his load on obviously first-year player, but also knowing we were coming out of that game into a 6-day break, which means we've got a fresh player. Obviously, our Sample played on the Sunday, which for those guys it's 5 days into a game if required.
How's that changed over time? I mean, can you imagine in your Flame day, a bloke who's played 2 games and being rested as such?
Yeah, we wasn't rested. I had him there as a contingency, which we always take a travelling emergency over there. It was just, the way with Tom Lynch coming back in, it sort of squeezed him out, and we felt he gave us pretty good cover for if a forward or a back or someone else went down. So that's why he travelled last week, and it just happened to tie in that, for his development and for his sort of first year in the system, it worked out well as well.
Don, we had a chat with Daniel Talia yesterday. He expressed some frustrations about the slow start against St Kilda. I guess, do you put that down to anything, the reason for that slower start?
Not really. I think it's one of those things which we look at every game and review every game in terms of what we did well and what we didn't. And I think it was fair to say, from a contested ball viewpoint, we're a little bit off, and that's taking nothing away from St Kilda. We knew they were going to come out and play really strong in that space. So we want to make sure we start games right on in that space. But we also recognise we're going into a contest, and you don't get everything your own way all the time. So to the players' credit, they were really able to respond in the second half and turn around the contested ball number, and that gave us what we were after, which was access to the ball, some field position, and then we hit the scoreboard.
So was there anything done today at training or spoken about this week to make sure that doesn't happen again, I suppose, against Collingwood?
No.
We saw Collingwood throw a few different things at Carlton last week. I was throwing a few midfielders playing the forward line. I think guys like Treloar and stuff spending time there. How do you go about sort of negating that if that happens again for us? Yeah,
well, I've done that for a few weeks now, with whether it's Treloar or side bottom. Pendlebury's down there occasionally. Adams as well, more out of the goal square as a deeper forward. So you will look at that in terms of how we structure our back six up. It obviously allows them to keep some of those quality players on the ground, and then we look at how that sort of means what it means for, say, how we structure the back line up and how we get the matchups right.
Well, Pendlebury spent a bit of time with Paddy Cripps, almost a negating role. Interesting to see him go head-to-head with Rory, wouldn't it?
Yeah, we'll see how that pans out. I mean, obviously he did that job for them last week. I think the week before he spent some time in the ruck, so they're obviously looking at a variety of things with their mids, and they've got a high-quality midfield, and with Brodie Grundy in the ruck as well. We're going to have work cut out on Friday night against what is a good challenge for our guys.
Would you expect that Pendlebury to go to Sloane for
that? It's a possibility. Again, I don't do their match committee or selection. I'll leave that with them. We'll look at how we best match up against them and what we need to focus on.
With that in mind, do you do anything different different with Rory? I know it was a topic all last year, but would you say anything or prepare Rory any differently?
I think Rory prepares now for the eventuality that he might get a run with. Now, last week I think it was, from what looking at the game, it was more just to be accountable for Cripps at the stoppage, which obviously one of his great strengths is his ability to win clearances, and I think he kept him down to 5 or 6 clearances on the night, so he did a great job there. So what view they take against our midfield and how they want to go about it, we'll see. But we'll talk about the possibility of that happening for Rory.
And you touched on you have to match committee. You decide on your balance. What challenges does Collingwood throw up from a team balance point of view as opposed to the side you selected against St Kilda or Richmond?
Yeah, look, not substantially different. Obviously, we want to play guys who are in good form and guys who are playing well. I think our back 6 were really effective last week. They're slightly different, and they've really got Reid and Cox as their 2 main tools. As you say, that smaller mid coming out of the deeper layer. So, but our guys have been able to adapt around that, because we had Richmond 2 weeks before, which was a bit shorter down forward line than last week, or even Essendon first game of the year. So every week you're going to get just slight variances of sides, how they move the ball, how they structure it with personnel, and it's again a challenge for our guys, but also to make sure we've got the right mix, but we've got the right focus areas for our players to be able to execute what we need to get done.
From a game general perspective, a bit of talk about Conor McKenna's 3-game suspension for Biden. Do you think 3 games is enough of a deterrent for something like that?
Yeah, well, again, I haven't followed that, to be honest, in detail. I saw obviously the penalty handed down, and I'll just bank on the fact that the incident was deemed by the tribunal to be of that level. Now, again, as I said, I haven't seen the detail, the depth of the size of the bite or anything else, so it's really hard to comment. I'll just assume that they've looked at it and decided that was the severity, and that was what was required. So I was comfortable with that.
Yep. Last time it was a pretty epic contest with that fairly significant lead. I think it was 50 points in the fight back. Do you draw anything from that game? Do you look back at that at all and take anything away from that?
Well, it was a weird game, wasn't it? We sort of almost got out of jail there, 50 points down. Hopefully we're not in that situation come Friday night, but and that was primarily driven off the contest stuff, to be honest. I mean, we got beaten badly around the ball, so the importance of that and that statistic still becomes really relevant for us on Friday night. So no, not a lot. I mean, obviously we were able to come back and grab 2 points. And Collingwood played some good footy, so we know Collingwood's very capable. We've seen that already this year. They were leading GWS in the last quarter and obviously won last week, so another good test.
Their midfield is probably where most of their stars are on paper anyway. You haven't really deployed too many tags as such in the past, but do you sort of say to a Cam Ellis-Yolmer or a Hugh Greenwood, we want you to be a bit more defensive with stoppages this week?
Well, I think and you're right, we haven't gone down the sort of tagging path. There's not many teams at the moment who are, and generally it's fall into team defence and probably a bit of accountability around stoppage. So again, Scott Campiali, our midfield coach, will look at that and he'll determine what's the best way for us to set up. And I think against St Kilda in the second half, certainly we were probably a little bit off in some areas in the first half, but certainly against Richmond I thought we were really strong in that space, and without necessarily going to run tags on a Martin or a Cochin. So that's probably the way we would lean.
Given that is their sort of clear main strength for probably almost A-grade midfielders, do you have to put more time into that area?
Well, we have to put time into every area, and midfield is a key area. So that's a key focus for us every week, not just this week. And I'd like to think our midfielders are capable of generating ball for us as well. Are
you enjoying the way footy's being played at the moment, Don? A lot more high scoring, seems like a bit more free flowing.
Yeah, well, it's generally always the way in the first 5 or 6 weeks of the season. It's sort of weird if you look back over the time, you sort of find early days people are getting to 100 points and the scoreboard's sort of ticking over, and as the year progresses, teams' defence and their defensive mechanisms and actions sort of tighten up a little bit. So it's not unusual at this time of year that some high scoring, and I expect, as is every year, the trend will be towards, slowly but surely, as the season goes on, people start to tighten up. Do
you have a preference in terms of being a higher scoring team to beat your opposition, or being more defensive minded, or are you just happy to win by 1 point?
We execute and operate in the environment. We want a good balance. We want to be able to hit the scoreboard, but we clearly want to keep the opposition from ticking the scoreboard over. So that's always a balance, because you want to make sure that you're able to move the ball with efficiency and still defend behind it. So but that's our model, which is not primarily focused on defence or offence. It's balanced.